Dr. Gommerman, do you want to quickly add anything about the variants in the AstraZeneca vaccine? Because I know there was a publication maybe like a month ago now that against the B1351 or South variant, the one that originated in South Africa, it seemed to be not that effective. Do you want to give any context to that for people who may be concerned?
Actually, I think it's more, this might be a question for Dr. Sharma as well. Like, this was potentially a trial design issue. So there was a trial in South Africa, and it only had 2,000 people in it. So it's not a very big trial. And the vaccine, the AstraZeneca vaccine failed to protect from mild to moderate COVID-19. And that was the result. Now, the WHO has continued to support the rollout of the AstraZeneca vaccine in other African countries where we know that this variant is present. So I think that says something. And the other thing to remember about this vaccine, the AstraZeneca vaccine, is its storage. I mean, you can keep this thing in the fridge. And this is a big plus for vaccine distribution, not just in Africa, but in all sorts of places. I'm sure Dr. Richardson could comment on that as well when it comes to the challenge of administering vaccines in remote locations. So I think that the trial design may have precluded the conclusions being as strong as they were. And as I mentioned, the T-cell response to the B1351 variant is still okay in vaccinated subjects. So I'd be curious to know what Dr. Sharma has to say about that.
Yeah, totally agree with Dr. Gommerman said. So yeah, there's two parts of it. One is the laboratory tests and studies. And the one that kind of got a lot of media play was a study that was showing an antibody response that was only about 10% against the 1351 in the lab. And again, that just doesn't take into account the whole T-cell response. So that was part of that. That's interesting, but isn't necessarily as meaningful as people made it out to be. Then we're looking at what we have in individuals. And the other thing, Dr. Gommerman said there was a small study. It was also, the population was very, very young. So that was the other thing, was whether or not there was, it was even a population that we can sort of extrapolate from. I think the bottom line on the effectiveness of AstraZeneca against the variants is that from what we know, it still should be quite protective against severe disease and death. And it may shift, but right now in Canada, the 1351 is not the predominant circulating variant. So, we're if we had it, it would probably be okay, but we don't have that much of it. So that should make people feel more comfortable taking the AstraZeneca vaccine. I think part of the challenge of this reaction to some of the studies that we have is that then the vaccine does not get used, or it does not get studied more in depth. And so, we're left with kind of partial information, and then the studies that would actually give us the real answer aren't being done. So I think that's the challenge in this environment.
Can I just add to that is that the laboratory tests themselves, it's important to understand that when you measure something called neutralizing antibodies, not all of these trials are doing it the same way. And so that can really change the outcome of the result. And it's unfortunate that we're not standardizing that. I mean, we've only had a year, so I would love to see those tests more standardized across trials so that we can really make comparisons. And then the other thing is, when you measure these so-called neutralizing antibodies, what we are learning, again, very recently, is that it's not all about those antibodies. There are other antibodies that actually don't neutralize the virus, but have very potent antiviral properties. So when you just see one piece of data, it's really easy to take that out of context. And I think a little bit of that happened here.
Mm-hmm.